Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? Get ready, dog. Get ready.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Rocket Networker. I always like to begin with a silly networking story. Today's story is about building your personal network by serving as a volunteer board member for nonprofit organizations. Over the past 30 years, I've had the privilege of serving alongside and becoming friends with too many business and community leaders to count. Their stories and success always amaze me. And that's where today's Rocket Networker guest comes in, Michelle Amato. Michelle and I met while serving on the Board of Trustees of the University of Toledo Alumni Association. We share a common bond through our love of the Rocket Nation. Michelle, thanks for making time in your busy schedule to join us here on the Rocket Networker podcast. Welcome.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So listen, I appreciate you taking time. I know you've got a busy workday going on. So I just, thank you for making the time.
This is fun. This is going to be the best. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the best part of my day.
Well, we'll get a little bit into that to learn more about that. So listen, let's do this. I want to go back and talk about a thing we talk about here on the Rocket Networker podcast, the threads of connectivity. And in simple terms, the threads are just those little things that tie us as human beings together, right? We all know in work and networking and work, we know that work's important, right? That's how we make our living, take care of our family and ourselves. But when it comes to building trust and relationships, work's the last thing people typically want to talk about. We want to talk about our hometown, our family, our friends, our community service, life in general. Those are the things that bond us together. Those are the threads that connect us. So let's go back in time. Take me back to your hometown. Where are you from?
From Parma Heights, Ohio. I'm in Cleveland right now, so about 20 minutes south. Parents are still in the same house that I was born in. My dad built it with his own hands. I don't think he'll ever move out of it. And most of my family is in the area. So Parma Heights.
All right. Now, where did you go to high school then? Did you go to Parma Heights High School, or what's the name of the high school?
No, I went to Valley Forge. I happened to be married to someone from Parma, so I always tell him that he married up. He went to Normandy and I went to Forge, and I was the first person in my family to go to college. So
Really?
when I was in high school, I was really good at music. That was the one thing that I did well, and I thought I was going to be a music teacher. And
Nice.
lo and behold, I am not a music teacher, but that is kind of what drove me to the next step and how I landed in Toledo, quite honestly.
All right, that's kind of neat. So take us into high school a little bit. Were you involved, like student government or the band, or what did you do to anything in high school besides just go to school?
Oh, I was involved in everything. And I'm kind of the same way now. I mean, I've just always been that person that wanted to get involved, wanted to take a leadership role. I honestly think it's that involvement that really saved me in terms of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I end up finding out many, many years later, I actually have horrible ADHD, really bad attention. And so I was an average student. And because I always had a really hard time, paying attention because my mind was on the next best thing. What else can I do? And so I just got involved in a million things. Student government. I was the drum major of the band. I was in charge of the blood drives. I mean, anything that you could sign up for, I was signing up for it. And so when I was going to go to college, because I was involved, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to go somewhere that gave me the freedom to change my mind because
Gotcha.
I wasn't positive. And
Right.
being the first person that went to college in my family, I didn't have a lot of guidance. And I had a friend that was going to go to UT, and I went along with her for a visit, and I fell in love with it from day one. And I thought, this is where I need to be. And, lo and behold, and a couple majors later, I changed my mind a few times because I wasn't sure. And that involvement carried me through college just as much. And I could speak forever about how much I learned from just being involved in all these different activities.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we share the ADHD thing in common. I can relate to that. I'm the same way. I got my hands on all kinds of stuff, and I love,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not a fan of sitting still. So now,
You know, there's a beauty to it too, though. There's a beauty to it as well.
there is, it's I always joke with folks that when it comes down to getting invitations to the Miss Congeniality cocktail hour, I don't get those invites, but the when there's a problem to be solved or a fire to be put out, I'm usually the
I'm
first
there.
call.
Exactly.
So there's an up and a down to it. So you know what? Let me back up just a little bit. You talked a little bit about your family. Go back into
Yeah.
that a little bit. Brothers, sisters, what? Tell me a little bit about them.
I was the oldest, first grandchild, both sides, and the oldest of the two. So I have a brother that's 4.5 years younger. Dad was in construction. Mom worked in the schools. Neither of them had an opportunity to go to college. But I learned work ethic from my parents from day one. I mean, they have and still are the hardest working people I know. And I attribute every long hour that I work comes from what I've learned with my parents. And,
It's
if my
interesting.
dad would have gone to school, he probably would have been an engineer, but he wasn't. So he worked his way up through construction. My mom probably would have been a teacher, but she didn't go to college. So she worked her way up to be the principal's, secretary, and she was in charge of everything. So,
Right.
I kind of learned that from my parents, and I started working at 14, and I haven't stopped working since.
Right.
I've worked every day since I was 14 years old, and I can't imagine not having that as a part of my life. But that
Right.
came from my parents for sure.
Yeah. It's funny. Our upbringings are similar, very
Yep.
similar, and that same work ethic, just going at it hard and helping other people. And my family always taught me there's always folks less fortunate and that need help no matter who you are and where you're at. And
Yep.
I
Yep.
think my family, we live by that. We love helping other people, and probably to a fault, right? We love
Yeah.
serving
And,
other
and if you
people.
don't learn it from your family, it's tough to teach it. It's tough to
It
learn
is.
later, but it's just a part of who I've always been because of my parents.
Yeah, that's neat. That's a great tribute to them. So
Yep.
now you're in high school. You talked a little bit about being involved and being active. What advice would you give to a high school student today? If you were sitting down with a bunch of freshmen in high school and you were saying, "Gosh, if I could go back and do it again," what would your advice be to them as freshmen in high school? What would you say to them?
I think it's definitely, one thing, if you are struggling and you really are not sure what you want to do and where you are academically, I think I would have loved to have gotten some assistance earlier on, because I think I always really kind of struggled with staying focused, and that just continued to be something. So I wish I would have nailed that a little earlier and had some help. But I cannot stress enough what the involvement means long term for a student.
Right.
And I was in a situation of giving out scholarships at UT, and then giving out jobs. After that, my role has always been something like that. And if somebody was not well rounded, they could have the best grades in the world, but if they didn't have the life experiences and learn how to deal with adversity and different types of personalities, it is so invaluable. And I'm not saying that school is not. It is a balance. I think you have to do both. And so there's just things you're going to learn in being involved that you're not going to get out of a classroom, and vice versa.
Right.
But it is the invaluable pieces of how to work with other people that will serve you for forever.
Amen. I wish I had gotten that advice my freshman year of high school. I was
Yep.
a wannabe jock that was not big enough to be good, but worked hard because I thought I was.
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah.
But,
Oh yeah.
I played sports, but I didn't get involved in student government or other things. And looking back, that's to your point, it's about the balance. I learned that later in college, but
Yep.
it sounds like you got that earlier on. So good advice,
Yep.
sage advice. Now let's talk. You talked about how you got to the University of Toledo and you were thinking about, but let's pull back for a minute. When you were in high school, were you always thinking of Toledo to go to college, or were you thinking of other school? Like, what were you thinking about?
I wasn't thinking about much. I mean, I knew I needed to go to college. I knew I was good in music, but I wasn't sure I really wanted to do that for the rest of my time. And I kind of was just looking around at, people that were older than me, a class ahead of me, 2 classes ahead of me. Where are they going? What are they doing? And then, and Toledo was a pretty big choice for people at Valley Forge at the time. And for me, and then, fast forward when I was a missions counselor, and I'll say this all the time, but for me, it was once I got to that campus. And there was a feeling there of, number one, getting out of my bubble of where I was in Parma Heights and seeing the diversity and the opportunity and the excitement. And I needed that larger school feeling. And so, many people now, and, students now, they know where they want to go when they're freshmen, sophomore, juniors. They're looking at colleges much earlier. We weren't looking that early, when I graduated. True. And, you were just kind of getting your stuff in. And so I felt very fortunate to have found Toledo, because I think if I would have gone elsewhere, I don't know if I would have had the opportunities to change it up and really kind of find myself over that time, and really own in on what my skills were. Because when you're going into school and you don't have a lot of guidance from your family, you're really not sure about how do you take what you're good at in your skill set and how do you apply that in real life. Right. And it was a little bit of trial and error there for me for a while. And so Toledo was it was the right choice, but I was led there by people in front of me, which I am thankful.
That's great. That's awesome. So now let's go to college now. So you get to college, you get to settle in the dorms, pick it up from there. Like, what was college like for you?
It's a lot of fun. I had a good time. I loved it. I needed that freedom and that independence, but also, I was only 2 hours away from home. Had a lot of people from my hometown if I needed them. So there was still that kind of safety net there. But for me, it was about really getting to know a much more diverse subset of people, and really testing myself. I could be in charge of stuff in high school, but when you're all of a sudden in a bigger bucket with a bunch of people that don't know you, and, can you transfer that? Right. And from day one, I did the same thing, and I was looking for opportunities. And, Toledo had 200 student organizations, so there's a lot to pick from. So I was extremely social from the beginning. Did not enter Greek life until my second year, so I waited a year. Gotcha. And, when you enter Greek life, and especially at Toledo and the way that it was, you became friends with everybody there, not just the people in your chapter. You were all right there. Right. And those are still friends, till today. And I just think back, when I think back and I go back to the best memories, it is by far the people, and not just my classmates and sorority sisters, but the administrators. And, I worked a lot in student government and student activities. And, Lori Edgeworth is a part of history for so many people at the University of Toledo, and she was a huge part of my history. And it was really special people like that made that school feel smaller and made it feel like a safe environment for you. And I don't mean safe from, safety in that way, but a safe environment to fail. If you did that, I felt like the administrators, Dr. Abrahamowitz, and just some of those people that were there, that they would pick you up and they care about their students. They do. That's what I loved about that institution.
That's great. Now, what sorority are you a member of?
Chi Omega.
Oh, that's right. It's interesting. I remembered you were in a sorority. I didn't realize that you're a Chi. Now, my wife Debbie's a Chi as well, from Toledo.
Oh, well, look at that. And I have met a few people along the way now that you get older and you meet people throughout your business, and all of a sudden you cross paths. You're like, God, I really like this person. Then you realize, oh my gosh, we're in the same chapter. Yes. It really was. I wanted to make sure, though. I will back up. I wanted to make sure that Greek life was not the only thing I did. I really wanted to diversify the types of things that I got involved with. And so student government was a big piece of that. I did a lot of diversity training and hung out with Jeff Johnson a lot, and he got me involved in a lot of things, and really pushing myself outside my comfort zone as a kid from Parma Heights, and forcing myself to spend time with people that I had not spent time with before.
Right.
Um,
It's interesting that when you talk about, campus involvement and then kind of Greek life, fraternity sorority
yep.
involvement. When my daughter and son both came from New Jersey to go to school at UT, so their legacies with their mom and dad. And it's interesting that my daughter became a Chi-O, or is a Chi-O, and she's since graduated and moved to Charlotte. And then my
That's
son
awesome.
became a KDR, like me, a Kappa Delta Rho
Oh my
member.
gosh.
And so they're not only legacies of our college, or legacies of our fraternity and sorority. And so it's fun, that family bond and passing that connection down. But the reason I share that is, talk a little bit about, okay, so you got into Greek life and you made the
Yep.
statement that it made the campus smaller, right? It's a big campus, a lot of students, but it made the campus smaller. Talk about that a little bit, and how that Greek life experience was a springboard to get into other involvement.
It, I think for me, it was just making sure that, number one, I'm looking out for other people and they're looking out for me.
Right.
And I think, people have different opinions on Greek life and
Mhm.
Greek life, or a lot of other options that are out there, just to have a subset of people that want you to succeed. They want you to do well. They're going to pick you up if you fall down. That, to me, having that kind of built-in group of people, was just, it was good for me. It was, it gave me an opportunity to, take on more opportunities within Greek life. I mean, I got very involved there too, but to also appreciate what other people are bringing to the table.
Right.
And, not every day was perfect. And it's not that you're not going to love every single person, but at the end of the
Right.
day, it's respect and a commonality between everybody. You're
Yes.
all away from your family. You're all going through this, the most formidable time of your life
Mhm.
is in college. And, you know, I made mistakes. We all made mistakes, but somebody was always there to pick me up, and somebody was always there to make sure I was okay.
Right.
And even when you don't think you need it, you need it.
True.
And so I think for me, it was just this kind of built-in community of people that has lasted for decades. I mean, I just got together with, 15 sorority sisters in Florida a couple months ago. We hadn't seen each other in years, but it's like we just picked it up where we left off and kept going. And you go back to all those memories, and you don't realize how good it is when you're in it.
Right.
You
Right.
always want to be older. You always want to be somewhere
Right.
else.
Right.
But I go
Right.
back to that in an absolute heartbeat.
I'm with
It
you.
was the best year. They were the best years.
Yep.
By
Similar experience. So now so you're in college, you're active, you're super involved, you're doing all kinds of fun things there, you're meeting cool people. Now you start getting toward your junior and senior year, and you
Yep.
start thinking of, uh-oh, there's this thing called graduation and then life
What am I going to
coming
do?
at.
Yep.
What are you gonna
Yep.
do?
So I was working in the Dean of
So
Students
tell me about that
office.
thought process.
Well, I was working in the Dean of Students office, and then I started working kind of in admissions, and I was really liking what I was doing in admissions. I was in graduate school, and then I had an opportunity to take on a full time role in admissions. And I
Okay.
thought, if this isn't the best step for me, I mean, I loved my college experience. I was starting to kind of get that professional experience going, but I had this opportunity to go to high schools where I was from in Cuyahoga County and talk to students that were at my age, and back, and a lot of them first time generation college students,
Right.
and talking them into coming to the University of Toledo. There couldn't have been a better step for me.
Right.
And I could have done that job for the rest of my life. I mean, it was fantastic. It was, for me, it was that, a safe step up, still in an environment that I knew, and still having those people around me, but really taught me how to be a great professional, but taught me how to be persuasive, how to listen,
Right.
and how to help people really kind of get to where they're trying to go. I would be really honest with somebody. If I didn't think UT was the place for them, I'd be honest with them. I
Mhm.
wanted them to find the best. I didn't have that. And so I
Right.
love the first generation college student and the parents that they've never done this before. That was my favorite thing to do, was to sit
Yeah.
down with them and try to help them through that journey. So there just couldn't have been a better first position for my profession. That was it right there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. So when you came out then, when you graduated, did you work full time then for the university in
I
admissions?
did. I did. Yep. I worked full time in admissions, and I had all the high schools in Cuyahoga County, and would visit. I did that 2 hour drive on the turnpike every week, and all
Yeah,
the fairs, and would do the big tour days. I was a tour guide while I was going through college, and I just kind of became a
kept going.
professional tour guide, I guess.
That's
but
cool. That's great. So, so,
yeah.
so now let's keep going then forward from there. So you're tour guiding, you're doing it missions work full time. Where does your career path go then? What happens next?
So I received a call from a headhunter, and it was about a position as a recruiter. So I'd already been kind of in a recruiting position, and then it was a recruiter for what was Anderson Consulting,
Okay.
now is Accenture, and the role was to recruit college students, undergraduate college students, to become entry level consultants.
Okay.
So same skill set, same kind of, the job at hand was similar. Um, I'm going to go back to what I said before. I could have stayed in that role in admissions for the rest of my life, but I knew that I was in a very protective environment within those four streets, and I had all my people, and I knew who to call. How good am I really if I don't try to do something different and step outside? And it was a chance to go back to Cleveland, which I knew I would do eventually, but I wasn't rushing.
Right.
Um, and I took it, and it was a little bit of a leap of faith, because I was safe at the University of Toledo.
Right.
That was a safe position for me. But this pushed me out a little bit, and I loved it. And again, same transfer of skill sets of trying
Right.
to. It's a transfer of emotion and trying to listen to someone, try to help them understand why this is an opportunity. Which is funny because I do that today too. So that it just seems to be my theme that,
Right.
and I loved my time at Anderson. I mean, to go from a nonprofit organization, go from from a college or university into a corporation like Accenture,
Right.
I knew I was surrounded by just unbelievably intelligent, driven people, many of
Right.
them who are still friends to this day.
Right.
And it was an outstanding block in my professional career. I owe Anderson Consulting, Accenture an awful lot in terms of perfecting my skill set and kind of making me a little bit more sophisticated in my young years. Another step up. So it was great.
Right. That's cool. So now you're working at Accenture, you've transferred the skills over.
Yep.
I get it. It makes total sense. So keep going now. What happens from there? Where do you go from Accenture?
So I'm there one day, and I get a phone call from Case Western Reserve, and now I am at Accenture. I'm giving out money, so I am giving money to Case Western and their engineering school, and I'm the donor, not the fundraiser. And the group that worked there all got hired to go over to Cleveland Clinic, and of course I knew Cleveland Clinic. I grew up in Cleveland. And I get a call from Carol Moss, and she says to me, "I want you to come work at Cleveland Clinic." And I said, "What in the world would you want me to do at Cleveland Clinic?" And she said, "I want you to be a fundraiser." And I said, "Absolutely not. That sounds horrific." I'm like, "I do not want to do this." So then
Don't
she
want to
said, "Meet
do
me
that.
for a drink." Then it was meet me for a drink. So of course, meet for a drink. And she said, "Listen, this is a relationship building business. I've watched you do it. This is what you've been doing your whole life." And she said, "There's no better place than Cleveland Clinic. And I'll teach you how to fundraise. I just need a relationship builder." And at the time, the timing was perfect because the hiring had gotten down, but I mean, big time. We just took a huge decrease in hiring. I'd made it through a ton of cuts, but I was kind of stagnant for a while. There wasn't many places to go. And so
Mhm.
the timing was great. And so another leap. And next thing I know, I'm a fundraiser at Cleveland Clinic, and it's 22 years later. So
Wow.
somebody had some good instinct there, and I owe that to her.
Right. She saw that inside you and helped bring it out. That's cool.
And
So,
now,
so
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so 22 years, that's awesome. I mean, you've been there a long time. Obviously, you must love it. So
I
talk
do.
about what you're doing today there. What do you do today at Cleveland Clinic?
It is it's the most amazing organization. never thought I'd be here for 22 years, and I can't imagine going anywhere else. And I tell people a lot, I'm not going to be the next president of the American Fundraising Professionals Group. It's not the fundraising that I like, it's the organization. And, it was the same thing. I wouldn't have been a college admissions counselor anywhere else. I wouldn't have gone to a different consulting firm. I would never go to a different hospital or be a fundraiser anywhere else. Like, I truly believe in this mission. And my role right now is to work with our physicians and our leadership to understand where philanthropy can improve our patient care, can help our patients, can make us a stronger organization. I get to be at that intersection of the patients and the physicians and the donors. And it's a really, really special place to be. This place there's a mission moment around me every day. And this is a fast-paced organization. And I tell people all the time when I interview, if you don't like fast-paced, we're going to clip you in the slow lane. So, you got to want to really move here and be on your toes. And I thought I was with intelligent people before. I mean, sitting in the room with some of our surgeons and some of these, they give their lives to this institution. And it is just, I am in awe every day of what happens here. And I'm in this special place of being able to help a family make an impact and help our organization move forward. And, people have different thoughts about fundraising. When I'm at a cocktail party, what do? I'm a fundraiser. And next thing you know, you're looking at somebody's back because they're running away from you. I don't love fundraisers, but it's not that. I mean, it's about engagement. It's, it's engagement and philanthropy. It's not, I wouldn't describe myself as a fundraiser. It's really about connecting people and getting them connected to the moment. And as one of our trustees says all the time, it's a transfer of emotions. And I never realized that coming into this role, philanthropy can be very therapeutic for people. And, the outcome is not always great. And I'm in an organization where, people, it's not always a great ending. And so philanthropy can be that time of building a legacy, or they want to make that gift before their father passes, and they want to build, something so that they can remember a loved one. That's a privilege right there, to be in the middle of that conversation.
It is. I'm with you. It's interesting. My daughter, when she came from New Jersey to Toledo, she had the honor of doing some internships at ProMedica and their foundation, and the leadership there and the staff at ProMedica's foundation is outstanding. And she fell in love with that work. She worked for them for a couple of years after college, and then moved to Charlotte. So she's kind of charting her course with Atrium Health in their foundation. So she's in a similar path, and she feels that same passion around the connection to the
Cleveland.
Yeah. I don't know. Charlotte to Cleveland. I'm not sure, but we can always ask.
You just give me my phone number if she ever does.
She's a Chi Omega sister on top of that. So.
Bring her on.
But it is true, because I get to hear the same stories from her about, just the love of the connections of the people, and how that legacy at a sad time in people's life, it's a legacy moment as well. And that word legacy is, for many of us, that's a big deal, right? It is. Legacy is not, to me, about money. It's about the people you've touched and changed and helped along the way. And everybody's got their kind of own different definition of what legacy means to them. So I think that the stuff that the foundations do is outstanding. Now, let me shift gears for a second. Talk about family now. Do you have family? I mean, obviously your mom and dad and brother, but I mean, do you have family now? You have children, or?
So, mom and dad they're still here. They're still in Parma Heights. I got married late. I had a pandemic wedding. I built a house and got married in a pandemic. I don't recommend it to anyone. It was a little crazy, but I'm married to, his name's Matt. He's a high school teacher. Teaches in the Bay Village schools, and finance, law, accounting. And so our minds, complete opposite. I mean, we are the complete opposite from each other. And he brought to the relationship a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old that are now 15 and 13.
Okay.
And I brought some dogs. So,
I got you.
so I'm the four-legged mom.
What kind of dog?
Oh, I've got two German short hair pointers.
All right, there we
Yeah.
go. That's important, by the way, when we're in business. It's
Oh,
really important to know the dog side of things, or the cat, or the whatever animals in your life.
oh, 100%. I have bonded over dogs with more of our supporters than anything anything else. Because
Hey, it's a
people
thread.
love their
It's a
dogs.
thread of connectivity, right?
I know. It is. It's like one of those things that connect us. And that's a thing that I think people don't realize too, is that you're not, I'm not talking about money most of the time. I'm talking
I know.
about this kind of stuff.
It's
And
about life.
that's what's really neat. Yeah. But so family's great. The parents get along, they're four peas in a pod. They go out with themselves all the time. The moms call themselves Thelma
Great.
and Louise. I'm very, very lucky to have great in-laws, and I know my husband would say the same, but we've got great neighbors, real social, got a couple hobbies in terms of wine and golf, and it's just been, it's good. Things are good. And my parents are, they're healthy and they're doing great. And it's so interesting. We're in this time of my life where, my friends' parents are passing,
Yeah.
and
Right.
it becomes such a significant part of this category of life. And
It is. Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
You're living that
yeah,
moment. My wife, sadly, last year, my wife lost her father, and 5 months later, her mother. And in the
oh my
middle of
gosh,
my daughter got married, or our daughter got married. So yeah, we get it.
oh,
We're at that point in life where
it's a lot of
that, and
emotion.
there's, it's interesting. There are threads of connectivity. Yeah, it's a lot of emotion, and there's threads of connectivity that even in death draw us together because, like you said, folks our age are starting to lose family, and there's a connection point on that as well. There's a shared
Yep.
empathy and compassion that we go through, and as we transition now from being the kids to now being the, I don't know, the parents, I guess. That's it's kind of an interesting transition, especially on the holidays, right?
Yep.
So.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And that,
enjoy every minute of that.
oh, I do. I do.
So all right, now talk a little bit about I mean, obviously you're involved in the community through the Cleveland Clinic. That's part of your job. But
Yep.
talk a little bit about your community. I mean, you were super active in high school, super active in college. I'm going to guess you're super active now in the community beyond the Cleveland Clinic.
I wish I were more if I had the time. I am. And
Right.
I would, and the hard thing with me is I'm the type of person, if I'm going to be involved, I want to be involved 150%. And so, I started
Right.
with, gosh, I started in a bunch of different activities. And then we've got the Northern Ohio Italian American Foundation here in Cleveland. There's a lot of Italians in this town.
Okay.
And, really just kind of, it's definitely, we want to talk about connectivity, really getting people that have the same roots together, and how do you give back to your communities and the people that we serve, and even the
Right.
things that have kind of spider webbed out from the Cleveland Clinic. So things that we do that started at the clinic and have now rolled out when it comes to cancer and all the different, and ALS and MS. I get involved in a lot of those different activities as well, because it's kind of the thread that keeps it all together. But
Right.
the activities here keep me really busy, and now
Yeah, you're going at it.
I'm on the end of depending on people to be involved. And I respect so much, like, how hard, like, the people that work so hard, they're leaders and they've got their families, but they're still taking the time to be on boards and give back. That is a lot to ask, and
It is. It is.
organizations can't do it without people like that. So when you were talking about that before, about always serving on boards and nonprofits, that is an extremely a valuable thing. So thank you for doing that all the time.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's my problems. I struggle to say no, and it's there's
Uh-huh.
always when you kind of grew up like you were the same way, first generation, and we were lower middle income, and so it's interesting. I've always felt that there's people that need help out there, and
Yep.
who am I to not try to help even if I'm tired, and
Yep. That's
some days are
exactly right.
long.
It's time, talent, and treasure. It's not always money. And it's
Right.
sometimes there's smaller organizations out there that need the experience and they need the leadership. And so I always try to tell people it's not always about the money. Sometimes it's
True.
about other things too. So, the talent and the time is just as important.
Exactly. So let me shift a little bit and ask you this. So let's go out now. You're 100 years old, and we're looking backward now at Michelle's life. What's your legacy going to be? Have you thought about that at all? I mean, what do you think your legacy? What would you like your legacy to be?
That's a good question that I wish you would have submitted beforehand.
Well, why I ask it. It's interesting because it's not a question that we think about every day.
Yeah.
Because you know what, in your job, you're so busy thinking of helping people with their legacy, and you're
Yeah.
helping serve the people you work with and the people in your community, your family. You don't sit down and get a glass of wine and say, "Gosh, what am I gonna? What's my like?" You don't think about it, right? It's not
Yeah.
something.
You're absolutely right. And I do think that, I hope that it is that I always put others before myself.
Right.
And there's a good and bad to that sometimes, but I do, I'm the kind of person that if I have $1 left, the dollar is going to go to somebody else before it goes to me. And I think I've just learned that inherently through my roles. But I love bringing joy to other people. I
Right.
want to come into the office and I want to be the kind of manager that people feel like I care about them and that I'm coaching and that I want the best for them.
Right.
I love watching young people start and watching their career and watching them grow over the years. And, after a couple decades, you can watch people do that. That's a really neat place to be. And so
Right.
I hope my legacy is that I wanted others to always be successful and that I'd be there to catch them if they weren't.
Yeah, that's
Um,
great.
I love this institution, but I love my team just as much. And to be a manager, not everybody loves it. I love
True.
it. I
Yeah.
love it. And so I hope it certainly has to be about, where I put others in terms of, others and myself.
That's awesome. Well, we're getting near the end here. So let me do this. I've asked you a ton of questions. As you think through the dialogue we're having here, is there anything that's popped in your mind here that just before we wrap that you want to either share or talk about, or just, I always like to give that opportunity here as we get near the end of the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for even asking. I think a lot of it, when you think about connectivity, especially in what I do, I spend a lot of the day trying to figure out how to get to people and
Right.
how to connect to them. And the one thing I've realized, it is a small world. I mean, it really is a much smaller world than people. Once you start digging in, there are things that connect everybody.
Mhm.
And we've got some people here, some of our board members that are they're magical, when it comes to
Right.
how they network and they don't do it. They're not intending to go out and network. It's just the nature of who they are. That's
Right.
real networking to me. When you
Yeah.
just naturally can convene people and hold an audience and pick up the phone and introduce two people because they're two people that trust you,
Right.
or vice versa. I
Right.
love that art of connection and relationships. And so,
Mhm.
it's we didn't touch on it a lot, but it's the most important thing I think about what you're talking about in this podcast is just that connection to other people.
Yeah.
It's important for you for your health and your well-being, but it's
It's true.
also no matter what role you're in or what you deal with, someone is connected to you somehow. And if you just kind of study it, you'd almost be amazed. It truly is amazing.
Well said. And that really, I mean, that gets to the heart of the Rocket Networker podcast is
Yep.
trying to, and actually, doing some training around that and some keynote speeches around that to help people realize that, building a network is as simple as what we're doing in this conversation, right? So the whole intent of being together today is, and it's interesting if you think about our relationship, you know, I haven't probably seen you. We haven't seen each other. It's got to be 15 or more years, maybe
At
20 years,
least. At
back
least.
to when we were on the University of Toledo board,
Yep.
the Alumni Foundation board or the Alumni Association board. And what's interesting is, I consider you a friend. I consider you an ally. And it's like, I don't think we know each other super well, but there's a thread of connectivity
Yep.
that you know who I am and I know who you are because of your involvement, and we share the bond through the
Yep.
University of Toledo. And that opens the doorway to you and to me. If you reach to me or me to you, it's fast. And that's something that we don't teach at a young age. I think we need to be teaching it in high school, because it just shows, listen, be yourself. Don't try to be fake. Just be genuine and be who you are.
Yep.
Follow your interest and be attentive to others' interests in those threads and make those connections. I mean, so what you said a minute ago about just those connections, it's that simple. It really, I
Yep.
mean, this conversation today is an example of the simplicity of relationships. It's that
Yeah,
simple.
you're right. And if you called me and asked me for anything, just because, I would say yes. And
Yeah.
and I feel comfortable introducing anybody to you, and I would hope the same.
Vice versa. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think but that comes through that involvement. That comes through doing things more than than the 9 to 5.
Right.
And so when you say go back to the high school self, it's just go outside of that zone and get to know as many
Right.
people as possible, because they will care for decades. You'll be shocked at the people that you knew
Right.
10, 20, 30 years ago. They're still playing a role in your life.
It's amazing. And
Yep.
I'm just, what I love about it's their success is we continue through episodes like this and we go into additional episodes, hundreds of them, thousands of them. We're going to meet together people that just have this thread of just, like, you see them in a successful job like you're in, and you stand back and say, gosh, Michelle's just a normal person. She's in a great job in a great institution, but she's just a normal person. Wow, that's so cool. You know what I mean?
Yep. And and another thing, when you say what else, you can be an average student and do really well. And
Yeah.
and yes, if I could do it over again, I'd do it differently. But
Mhm.
I really think it's about your skill set and your whole skill set. And I know some really, really smart people that don't have the street smarts sometimes. It
Right.
is the street smarts that are going to carry you through so many
Right.
situations.
Right.
I mean, the people I'm surrounded by, I'm not even going to try to stack up, as to what they've been able to accomplish. But we both work for an organization that connects us, and we
Right.
both have our space in those organizations, and that's what makes me feel valuable here.
Right.
And it's so nice to be able to talk with you, and just to connect back to anything having to do with Rocket Nation is a special place to me for sure.
It's a special place for me. We share that. So listen, I just want to say thanks for making time in your busy schedule and for just sharing your journey with us. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you so
So,
much.
and no problem. And listen, I want to move to wrap up our conversation and just let the folks listening in today, that this the end of our episode, this episode of the Rocket Networker podcast. And just remember this: at Rocket Networker, we help launch connections to ignite success. And the question that I have for you is, are you ready? Thanks. To schedule a Rocket Networker training program or keynote speech, go to rocketnetworker.com. It's time to launch connections to ignite your success. Are you ready?